go through the brief profile that Anjali shared, the only two things that should be interesting for this group, if at all anything, would be one is that you might have noticed that my background comes from the typical management side. I was hearing Anjali and on how she was differentiating between market research and design thinking, and she gave a very interesting answer. I'll build on that. So that is one interesting thing that you might have picked up from my profile. And the other, if at all anything, is I have actually gone around many sectors. So from ITES to education to FMCG and now to industrial goods. So hopefully I bring some bit of experience of working and delivering on products. In fact, Anjali and I connected some time back on one of these products. So, and it was a wonderful interaction. And I hope to bring some of those discussions here. So maybe for you, Anjali and Janvi, some of that might be that you have already heard. But for the larger group, it has been a very interesting journey for me because in the end of the day, businesses essentially make products and services, and somewhere my work has always been at building these products or at introducing these products and services to the market. And in my last and the present stint, I'm actually working in the manufacturing sector with companies that make industrial good products. So typically, if you go on Google and if you type the best 5 design products, guess the names that will come. I mean, no prizes for that. You'll always have an Apple being there. You might have some more FMCG products being there, maybe an automotive company being there. You'll hardly hear of an industrial good company being out there, which is surprising, which is very, very surprising, because in the end of the day, all these products that go out to consumers, the end products that we are talking about, are actually being made by one or the other, or the components that come for them come from actually one or the other companies. And so how is it that the end product is a best design, good design, and the interior is not? Actually, the interior products or the components that really go into making products, and some of that I'll discuss today, are actually very, very critical and essential. And I mentioned to you about the work that we did with Hureo team, especially with Anjali and Janvi, and you will realize that typically very few design firms really dabble into the space of industrial goods. And my intent today is to actually share with you 5 key observations. So I thought, what can I do before the Diwali and not take you to a big journey? So I thought, let me have a very light festive week, and I'll just share 5 things with you that perhaps would summarize how I see the challenge of making good products, well-designed products, especially which are user friendly. So let me go straight into it. Now, I have given you just 2 caveats from my profile. Forget everything. I gave Diana a wrong picture, so the picture that I shared with her perhaps had hair, and I'm currently shaved it off. So other than that, everything is true about the profile. So let me move forward. Now, I come from management background, and this is one thing that came up in 1970s. One of the most famous marketing professors, Professor Levitt, mentioned it. And if you go on the core part of it, and you'll realize, and maybe this would answer to a large degree what Anjali was suggesting between market research and user studies. And Anjali, feel free to always add in now or later as this discussion goes. So this is Professor Levitt, who wrote in 1970s that people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill; they want a quarter-inch hole. So if you are an industrial good manufacturer, and think about it, XYZ company, and you are making a drill bit, or you are making a drill machine so that people can hang good their own pictures in their homes, do you think someone is really interested in buying a drill machine? A person who is not into building stuff, right? I'm not talking of power users. I'm talking of regular users like you and me. Typically, If you're at my home, these things would be kept away. I have two young kids, and so these things are really chalked out. But think about it. This quote really talks a lot about uh, what users want. I mean, a company which is making drills, and if it is promoting, is trying to market those products to a customer, telling them that my RPM is this and my machine life is this. Well, it is trying to give details to a user who's really not interested in that. I mean, if I were to pick up on random 5 users and ask them, do you want a 1500 RPM or a 1200 RPM machine? He'll say, Shantam, which machine will be cheaper? Which machine will be able to drill the hole better and easier to handle? He'll never talk about those things. But try to look at this and understand that where the market research actually went and why a very deep focus on user experience was to be brought in. And that is what the movement that you are seeing in last very strong movement in last 2 to 3 decades, and very critical as well. So this is still very relevant. Professor Levitt talked a lot about how you need to go beyond the obvious and actually look at what the customers want. Look at this. This is something much uh, recent. So Professor Christensen, many people know about him. Clayton Christensen, he did a lot of work in disruptive innovation. One of his recent works talked about jobs to be done. So he said, people don't buy products. We essentially hire something to get a job done. And so look at this field, how it expanded. So essentially, if you were just to look at the definition that Levitt gave, Levitt went a level lower and said, don't look at the product as a product, try to understand why the customer needs it. So drill a hole. Now, if you were Christensen, you went a level deeper and you said, you want to drill a hole. Maybe the person wanted to hang a picture. Now, if you can hang the picture without drilling a hole, that's too is an answer, right? So essentially, these two definitions, why I brought into focus, because I thought it will lend you very well into the larger discussion that Anjali and Janvi and the Hureo team will have with you through the 3 hours that you are there today. And you realize that, moving beyond the first definition of the product, moving beyond the obvious about the product is so very critical. And most of the time you'll believe or you'll hope that this is simple, this is this obvious. But the most trickiest part for any of us who have been in the product development cycle, to understand that why a customer buys your product and what are his intents, his interests. And the word I'm picking from Anjali here is behavioral. She talked about behavioral interest, is something that is of great interest. And if you are able to bring about or just carry this one word forward and think about that user research gives you a little more strong handle on behavioral aspects of buying. Think about when I'm building an industrial good, who is my user? So the reason I put that provocative, hopefully provocative, I have found it very interesting over the years, trying to understand who is my user in an industry. So when I make a product that goes in a factory, a mundane factory, which many of you might not even be visiting. So you might be consuming a mobile phone, but you might not have gone into a mobile factory. You might be driving a vehicle. You might not have been into a factory. And what kind of life is there? What kind of users are there? And what do they expect from product? So this presentation, I'm just trying to bring some thoughts from the manufacturing industry, that who is the user. So if you are talking of usability, and if you are talking about how can products be designed in such a way that their usability is high, the first question you need to pin down is, who is my user? Now, so if you are trying to understand product users and demand, try to look at this. Pretty clear. There is no ambiguity who the user is. So if someone was asking about market research, pretty straightforward. You can make a, maybe as Anjali was saying, make a survey, try to understand what is the screen size they require, what is the speed that they require. But two interesting things that you need to take out from here is product is very neatly defined, and the product user is also very neatly defined. So there's absolutely no ambiguity. Of course, their users can be of different types, right? And there is where you would come. If you are from market research side, you will talk about segmentation. If you are of user experience side, you might talk about personas. But essentially, you are able to link users, and you are, for this kind of a product, for a product like mobile, you are able to link it better. So if you look at if you look at this product, I'm pretty sure all of you, even if you just do a very quick exercise, and I will not do it because I'm not good at it, so I'll leave it for Anjali later or Janvi later. But think about it. Any of you in this call today, if we give you 2 minutes and tell you, give us top 3, top 5 things that you would like to suggest in your mobile phone, you would have the answer straight away. Very well articulated, because you have experienced these products, and these products are what typically I call them direct market or FMCG kind of products, which have direct single user. And so essentially what the product designers are trying to do, you are trying to do customization, and that is why you see multiple models of Samsung or Apple and whatnot. And you'll go crazy, right? Even if you're on Amazon, you want to buy a festive gift for someone, there's so many options that you will get lost. You might lose the deal because you're trying to look at multiple places. Look at another kind of an offering. Okay, sorry. If you look at this one, think about someone doing a user research, or you are designing something for an aircraft. Now it's multiple users using the same product. In the earlier case, it was one user, one product, right? Not many people nowadays share their mobiles, right? I mean, people have their, even if in a family of 4, you will have, unless until the kid is too young and doesn't understand, and you can get away by not getting him one, you can be sure that there'll be 4 mobile phones, right? In the second case, look at when you're designing something like an aircraft interiors. Very critical. What kind of leg spaces do you provide? What kind of entertainment do you put up? And there you find that we make balance by user standardization. So again, if you look at it, your user is well defined with against the first problem statement, where you might have multiple kind of users for whom you are designing multiple kind of variations. So single usage, so you have multiple, so you have in several customizations. Sorry. So that's the concern. If you go on the second side, on the other example that I've shared, same product but multiple usage. So the same person so the same product is being used by multiple people. So you see at user standardization. You I know many times people feel standardization is a negative, with a negative tinge, but not necessarily. Standardization necessarily doesn't mean that everything is plain bland. No, so you try to standardize things wherever possible, and you do still provide certain level of customizations, right? And look at this third kind of product. Anjali and Janvi would relate to it. We did this product together, something similar together. And if you look at it, I have changed it to Multiscope. So if you are looking at many of you would have heard about IoT products or digital products. A typical product in a suppose a little morbid example, but still these in COVID times. Suppose you look at any of the hospitals and you have these dashboards. Now that dashboard presents multiple data, and that data is, when a doctor sees, he reads a different data, or should I say, not read, but the data relevant to him is different. When a health worker or health service provider, be it a nurse, be it a what boy, if he's serving it out, then the data for him is different. The same way in a factory. So if any of you are from the factory or from the manufacturing background, factory is a wrong word, then you will realize that if I show you this dashboard, the plant head, the maintenance head, and everybody else would have their own perspectives about the same data. So when you are so the challenge that we get in industrial goods is if you merge both the first two options is where you get the industrial good challenge. You have products which are used by or which are typically used by multiple functions, and even in the same function you have multiple kind of users. So you have challenge of both customization and standardization. You have both a challenge of single type of usage and multi-usage. And from these three pictures, I just wanted to bring to your notice that, uh, the most fascinating world for designers, and a lot of good designs have actually happened in the first phase, even in the second phase, I must say, uh, in the where you have a very well defined user, or a very well defined product. So in both the first cases, either the user was fixed or the product was fixed, and then you were trying to work around how to deliver the best output. If you come to the third one, here is where the game changes dramatically. You have multiple users with different expectations, and then you have a product which needs to be not only customized but standardized at different level. Now, to give you an example on Multiscope from a manufacturing perspective, so I come from Forbes Marshall. Forbes Marshall has a company with a history of nearly 100 years. And what do? We make steam products. Now, if I say steam trap, it might not ring too much of recollect, and that's pretty fine. But essentially, if I say, did you have a medicine today, or did you have coffee or tea today with milk? Whether it's dairy, whether it is food processing, whether it is pharma, all of these companies run on one thing, which is steam. And for steam, you need to steam is generated through boilers, and it is transmitted across the plant through very critical products. Now, Forbes Marshall is into these products. We make boilers, and we make products which ensure that the steam is efficiently distributed in the plant. Now, if I show you a dashboard like this and think about it, if you are a boiler operator, you want only to understand how the boiler is operating. If you are a maintenance person, you are trying to understand whether things are right or not. If you are in the distribution segment, it changes and it keeps on changing. So the same software for me, and this is, I'm taking a software example, has multiple functionalities to address, and everyone would have their own level of requirements. Uh, the challenge here is you need to be comprehensive in reaching out to all these multiple scopes that are being raised out, yet ensure that you don't fall for the cracks that would happen. Right? It's pretty humongous if you try to customize for each and every user what you want. And perhaps this is one of the challenge. Now, as I move forward, I'll share with you 5 very distinct things that you'll find in manufacturing. Okay, I have 15 minutes, so I'm just taking my time. So I'll actually take you through just 5 things, and I hope that it will give you some clarity as to where, what kind of nuances you should expect when you are designing products in the manufacturing domain. Okay, so this is the first one that I briefly touched upon, the scope and the purchase interest. Now, who is my user and for whom I am designing this product? If I am a boiler operator, or if I'm a person working in a plant and operating a boiler, now think about it. This is not one of the most comfortable places. You have steam which is being generated at 100 degrees and very hot, very difficult place. So think about what kind of environment the person is working and what will he be looking at. maybe he'll be looking at things that can be a little bit alarm based, things that can be uh, things that are error proofing, things that can help him execute his task without any hassle, right? There's a boiler which is working and the boiler needs attention, and you cannot make a product which is taking much more time in understanding or in deciphering from the product and not paying attention on the boiler. So essentially, you'll find a lot of alarms, a lot of systems coming out there. And if you are making a product for such an environment and you end up making one more alarm, then you had it. You know that your boiler operator is not the person who's gonna vouch for your product and say, I want this product. Think about who makes the purchase decision. So in case of a mobile phone, you go in a shop, you like a phone, maybe that is too costly, so you take another phone and you compare, and if you like the phones, you buy it. I take this software, I show it to the boiler operator, and he's saying, Shantam, perfect. This is the best I have seen. I want it. That doesn't solve my problem, right? Because then who is doing the purchase decision? So you have another purchaser who's sitting somewhere else, who might not be working in the same environment. And please realize, as a user researcher, if you only discuss with the only end up discussing with the boiler operator, you might make a very good product, a very useful product as well. But if you are not able to understand the challenges, concerns, and or how do you influence the purchaser or person who is buying this product, then again it falls in a crack. You might have, so there has been this there's this story, I don't know how true it is, that when the early machines came in, some in some of the industries, when the first computers came in, the computers had to be, they had to be air conditioned. And if you are in a plant where the computer is, and if you had to put it in the, say, an operative place, so the operator was getting an AC and the plant head might not have got it. So now the behavioral aspect is very clear. How can that happen? Now you might say, in a very realistic, rational way, Shantam, it should happen. It's about the work. But we are, in the end of the day, we are humans, and it did not work out. So think about it. Even if the person likes the product in industrial good, very rarely the buying decision rests with the same person. So in case of a mobile phone, in a FMCG product, direct consumption, the person who likes it, the person who pays for it. In industrial goods, very rarely that happens. And to add to that, you have another third layer, right? You like the product, you suppose this is a software, you go and show this software, and everything is wonderful. The purchase team is also wonderful, and they say, we want this product. And you end up with the IT team. And the IT team tells you, hey, you have made this software in XYZ technology. I don't allow for it because I don't have maintenance professional for it. How many times have you bought a mobile phone thinking about maintenance? Typically, the most that you would have done in case, especially if a new brand is coming. So something that I did when I bought a new brand, I would go online and see, I'm in Pune, then I'll see, do you have any authorized dealers or authorized service centers? If there are authorized service centers, I'll go for it. I would not be bound by it. But in case of industrial goods, the first line of defense is not external but internal. So when you are designing products, you have a team which is suggesting to you that whether this product and solution meets my ecosystem or not. So look at the scope and the purchase and interest. This is the first takeaway from my end. When you are designing products for manufacturing sector, especially for industrial goods, you'll find that there are multiple people who are involved. And it's not one user, it's not just one person whom you need to understand to make a really true valuable product. I'll go to the next one. Product life cycle. I guess this slide gives up as soon as I put it up. Look at the products. So in case, what happens in industrial goods? If you have a mobile, then almost always you will outlive your mobile phone, right? You will be changing the mobile, and the mobile will not be changing you. Go to a plant, go to a factory, and most of the times the product will outlive the user. Most of these products will have 10 years, 5 years, 6 years, maybe 20 years. We have had products which have been done and developed so well. The quality has been so good that 20 years, um, the product still continues to work as required. But here is a challenge, and I want to just leave you with that. Uh, you do a first level analysis with the user, but that user whom you talked to while designing their product may leave. He may retire, or he may jump companies, and he may be out. And comes a new person who has different expectation from your products. It has happened so many times, for especially in this software domain, that right at the time of closing a project, if you have the personal change over, it really puts a different spin. If then this is where another point to Anjali's feedback, if the buying process was very rational, if the buying process was very template oriented, then change of person will not matter. But again, we are humans, so the person changes, it the decision process changes dramatically. And in industrial goods, this is your problem, because products will outlive the user, and the users will keep changing, but the product will be the same. If building consistency and experience across the value, across those periods and across those transitions is very, very challenging. Let me share with you the third one. So, what should you expect when you make an industrial product? I mean, I'm just taking one example from FMCG. You can take any example, television or whatnot. I'm taking a mobile phone, pretty simple. So I just kept the mobile phone and think about it. To operate your mobile phone, what else do you need? I mean, the charger and the electricity is there. So those are pretty standard. Other than that, maybe you need Wi-Fi internet, but again, that is very standard. If you look at a factory, your product will not be able to function uh, without the services or efforts of other company products. So most of the factories that you see, you will be having products from different domains. So a typical factory would be connected, complex, and at times chaotic. And I say it in a good way. So chaos need not be bad. So again, so look at this. What do you see in this image? I mean, if in this image you see something very, very huge, not coming from this picture alone would be showcasing maybe hundreds of products coming from different companies to get this plant operational. Look at this, different people working on the same system, uh, trying multiple knobs, multiple pressure gauges, trying to do the same thing. Something similar. So the thing here is that, in any of these plants, in any of these factories, when you make your product needs to gel with the existing systems and the existing technology. And there is where some of the challenge lies. Even if you are technologically, or should I say, from a design perspective, way ahead of the competition and your peers, you cannot still market a product, because in the end, your product is only one in the larger piece, right? So you really can't run away and say, okay, I've got the new thing. This is a new mobile, or this is a new chemical, or this is a new drug, and I have it, I'll launch it. It won't happen. In fact, if you look at the ecosystem story, I mean, again, coming from okay, let me share from an FMCG perspective. Now, many of you would relate, HD television, HD content. The first HD television, if some of you would recollect, uh, was first invented or launched in the 90s, early 90s. Any guesses which company would that be? So at that time, the company was Philips. Early 90s, they developed it. And yet today, if you talk about HD television, especially in India, you will hear mostly about the Koreans and the Japanese, maybe it's Sony, be it Samsung, LG, and whatnot. Why did they lose the bus? So if you look from an ecosystem perspective, they had the product, but the content, the people who were making the content in 90s, no one was making HD television content. So they came out with the technology, but their content was not there. So they lost the game. By the time the content arrived, their competition had picked it up. Now that happens typically in the FMCG or directly when you are marketing to end user. In an industrial good, what challenge do you have? The challenge you have is that your product might be one in the jigsaw piece of all the other products, and you need to ensure that you are not too good or too bad, but you are able to handhold other products that are changing in the plant. So very rarely a factory or a plant will have a complete overhaul, right? They, as things wear out, as things change, they implement new solutions. And so the importance of the newer technology to put a hand back and connect with the older ones and reach out to the future is so critical. So you are asking me to do the both the things. In one of the meetings, someone will ask me, Shantam, tell me, is this compatible to my existing plant? And if I have sufficiently answered him, I know the next question will be, okay, is this future ready? And how long will this product be usable in future? Now you'll have both these dualities coming simultaneously in industrial products. And again, please remember, the life cycle of industrial goods is very different. So very rarely, unlike in FMCG products where you have short cycles or shorter cycles, industrial goods would have longer cycles. In fact, what I did is, I took a product for you here. Uh, Sorry for the connected complex chaotic. I should have removed it. But this is a very standard product. And this, if you look at it, it's a pressure gauge. Um, what does it tell? It just simply there to tell you whether the pressure in the system is right as per expectations or not. This is how it ideally should be. But this is what you see. So in a plant, if, this is a picture from a plant where the pressure gauge is dysfunctional, it's filled with water, or you have so many of these. Think about usability of a pressure gauge. Essentially, what is the requirement of a pressure gauge? To communicate to the end person what is the pressure. Who is likely the person to be watching these, especially these two pictures? Maybe a operator in a factory, maybe an executive, an entry-level executive in a factory. Think about it. Person who typically might not be, if you maybe a graduate, most likely not a graduate. If he is a casual worker, then he might not be acquainted with these metric system or any of this. Not only are you expecting him to check and understand these figures, uh, there is a very important part of usability that you talk about, that learnability, whether a person can learn. What will he learn out of this? And secondly, uh, if suppose he comes back, if he sees the number as 1, suppose he looks in one of these pictures and says, oh, pressure is 5 bars, what is he supposed to do? Can he for a moment remember about all the set pressures and um, all the min and the max, at what time a red flag has to be released? And this is perhaps the most ubiquitous product you'll find in any of the plants, a pressure gauge. But think about it. This is a typical industrial good product, and a product which is used by companies across the world. Uh, Big market, yet to be. If you talk, people have started talking about digital pressure gauges. So yes, there are products for digital pressure gauges, but that's fine. You have augmented the capacity, but the look, the feel still remains the same. So if you look at this, this is just a very simple product which is being used in a factory, which is being used in an industry, and look at how it is intended to be, how potentially it gets used in the factory. Nobody can imagine. Very few designers or product developers would be factoring in all this, right? There is a limit to what you can actually extend, and but this is the reality of the world. And finally, I thought I'll also share. Some of you might be aware of it. Uh, the one place where some of the design principles you'll find in industrial goods, especially in factory floors. So I thought I'll take a process design. Now, Poka-yoke is basically a Japanese terminology. One thing that good practices or good assembly practices that the Japanese people have given to the world is through these systems of Poka-yoke, Kaizen, and whatnot. Now, this picture is very simplistic. It is just trying to Poka-yoke essentially means error proofing. So how can you design a system so that there are very minimalistic chances of an error? So if you look, the two pictures are just showing if you were to design a plug and a hole, how do you actually do that so that there is very little chance between an end user or an operator or an assembly person who might not be the most who might not have been trained or taken higher degrees, but who can basically just see and do the right thing. And this Poka-yoke I'm mentioning because if someone was to ask you on productivity and how design can play a role in productivity, well, the strength of Toyota and any of these larger companies from Japan essentially has been that they have been more aware or more open to design practices, even in their process side, than most of the other companies. Do an audit. If you get a chance, just go around and see any assembly station, and you will find tens and tens of ideas of how that can be designed better. Give you one last example on this. Think about an assembly station which has to tighten screws. Now, screws and nuts. Now, typically a product, most of the products will have different kind of nuts. If you go to a plant, I have been to many of these plants on audits, and I have found many times even segregating the nuts in different bins is a humongous challenge. You might have defined bins, right? You might have defined bins that, size 2 has to go here, size 3 has to go here, size 5 has to go here. But in the speed, in the heat of the moment, nobody is able to follow that. That's not the fault of the person. That's the fault of the design that nobody thought about how can it be made error proof. And such examples you'll find even in the process side. So these are just 5 examples, and the reason I gave the process example is when most of the people who are designing factories or when you are designing assembly floors, the person who is designing and the user is very, very different. And the objectivity to understand how you can help user, very rarely people realize that. One of the things that perhaps user research has been very, very important and critical is there was a time when, maybe because you had studied or received good education, you would sit and think about, okay, what will help my user, and you design it. So basically, it was the perception of what you feel would be good for a user, and that was what was designed. What user-centric design and user research in the past has been trying to work upon is to say, I don't know what my user requires. I need to go and learn from them. And I believe that essence of learning from the user is what what makes it so interesting and so challenging. It's challenging in the manufacturing domain because you have multiple scope and you have multiple expectations from different users, and your user is not constant. Your user keeps changing. So I'm just borrowing. This is from my experience, so this is take it with a pinch of salt. There might be other members who have more experience or more observations. So I leave it. I leave it open for debate and question. Uh, but if you ask me, these five kind of things, five levels at which you look at usability. If you look at learnability of a product for a manufacturing product or an industrial segment, pretty fair. Sorry. So in case of learnability, you'll typically find that we do fairly good documentation, largely because of the requirement of the uh, of the client or the requirement of the industry. We typically have it. So fairly, I'm not saying great, but fair. Efficiency, most of the time we are very, very good. So I mean, in fact, most of the time we are waiting to know, okay, what is to be done and we can do it. And efficiency is typically where most of the products across the industrial goods would be meeting their requirement. Memorability, questionable. So, and that's why I said, remember this fact, the product mostly outlives the user. So memorability is something which is very, very critical. Errors, you might think, Shantam, isn't it contradictory? You are saying learnability is fair, but errors is questionable, is because the kind of errors that come out are typically not really captured in the early part. Because it's a complex system, it's an interconnected system, uh, pinning down the problem becomes a challenge. And finally, on satisfaction, well, very, very few companies, I must say that Forbes Marshall has been one of the companies. We have a design team for many, many years now, and perhaps one of the few companies which is actually trying to say, can we give an Apple experience even in industry? So why can't an LED panel, why can't an LCD display be equally good in the factory as it is for individual consumption? But having said that, when the push comes to shove, other than few of these companies that I talked about, maybe Forbes Marshall, other than them, most of these companies, you'll find that the satisfaction takes a backseat. And that also happens because in the end of the day, as I shared, please remember the example that, it's the boiler operator who is using my system, but his choice is determined by whether the purchaser finds merit in my offering or not, and whether the maintenance team personnel is in agreement or not. And I'm just giving these three people. I mean, you might have many more people, the owner, the entrepreneur, many more people in that buying process who are going to influence the user. So with that, my final slide to all of you. Um, and I close by 5. So this is my final slide. Usability will be defined by products which can be identified, adapted to diverse contexts, address different stakeholders, and support systems over time. Any of you looking to enter design for in the manufacturing domain, there's a huge scope. It's a huge scope because very few people have ventured or tried to make a difference in this market. With that, I guess I've exhausted my time, bang at 5. So thanks. Thanks everyone for your patient listening. Uh, Anjali, if there are any questions or you feel to discuss anything or give a feedback, I'll be more than happy to.
Sure. We can do one thing. You can probably stop sharing your screen so people can see you full. And then the question, yes, cool. All right. So I know the time is almost up. Maybe we can take one question. There are a few questions actually. So first of all, before answering the question, the point that you were making, again and again, that product outlives the user. It's very interesting because I remember in my early career, I was doing a testing for an enterprise product, and my user, who was a gentleman in late 50s, he said, I've been using the product longer than you have been born on this planet. And it was very funny because you kind of keep having this younger people as well as this older people using the same product, and how to balance this, right?
Yeah.
So it was interesting because you are reiterating that point, and a lot of people who are making these apps for today's time,
Right.
For them understanding how certain other kind of products behave, which is completely different from like Uber, Ola, and Swiggy kind of app products. Yeah.
Yeah, because one thing is in manufacturing sector or especially in industrial goods, stability is very critical. I mean, because most of these plants, we still follow the old paradigm of scale and efficiency. Scale and efficiency typically comes with a little bit of stability, and that's why the products tend to last longer. And when you introduce a new product, you get a lot of resistance. You need to meet a lot of barriers or expectations, either ways.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so I will just take the first question. First come, first out. So let's see. The first question was, are let me put here. The question is, are cost-effective solutions always user-friendly? How do you balance cost effectiveness of a product and UX of it?
Okay. Actually, I'll leave the first question for Anjali. I guess cost effect. I don't see a very strong relation or something very objective to share. That whether how the price of a product is related to it. So there are products which may be cheap or which might not be very expensive, but very well designed and can really meet your requirements. And there are products on the other side as well. I guess as a designer or as a company, as a product designer, sometimes we need to take those hard calls as to what you would like to introduce. So what you want your product to do. I guess that defines the costs for us. If there is something that you really believe is going to add value to your customer, and if you're able to quantify that, well, that feature comes in. Or if that makes so how do we do it? I give you an example. Many of our products we design in many of our products while conceptualizing, we try to quantify what kind of benefit will the user get. And if the user is suppose going to get by using that product a benefit of say 10 lakh rupees or 1 million in 1 year, what should be the cost of that product? Even if making that cost of that product is 1 lakh for me, the user is going to get 10 lakhs out of it. So it's up to you. You can change, you can ask even for 5 lakhs or 8 lakhs, he should be willing to pay for it because he'll still be gonna on the positive side. So I guess the only thing I'll say is don't look at cost effectiveness. This is not to say that we put it out of the window. Cost is a very critical parameter, but try to pick up what are the features or what are the requirements of the user and see that how best you can build solutions around them.
Sure, I think that's a very well put point, because often people think, I mean, the word is used user friendly, but sometimes people think about UX also just a screen or just like a visual element of it. But I think, as you mentioned, that it goes much deeper. If a feature is a strong need for a user, maybe it's not well designed, but you kind of understand the strong need, which need is giving him a lot more value. So that is actually a very well-defined user need, and which is a part of UX. It's not just the screen.
In fact, Anjali, I mean, look, if you look at Apple phones, I mean, I consider them to be expensive, and they have got one of the best UX, and people buy it, and they are one of the most cherished products. So that clearly tells you that if a product is good, if it's well designed, there are people who are going to pay for it. So I'm just giving a counterpoint so that you don't get logged in that thought process that UX or user design needs to be always less costly. I mean, no, you can charge a premium for that. It just matters as to what is very critical for the user.